I'm Steve Green from PJTV, and I'm here today with science fiction author Sarah Hoyt, author of Darkship Thieves. She's got 2 new ones on the way, Darkship Renegades and A Few Good Men. We're going to talk to her about those today. Sarah.
Okay.
It's like she doesn't know me.
I have no clue who this man is. I've never seen him.
Never seen me before in my life. All right. So we go back to the first book, Darkship Thieves. You've got human colonies, secret human colonies in the asteroid belt. What is so awful on Earth that people are running away to the asteroid belt?
Well, they had this brilliant idea about, starting about a century from now, that, you know, you could get big government to work if we were governed by angels. So they decided to create the angels, only of course they weren't.
Not so angelic.
And things went, they're still human. I mean, yes, they're smarter and they're, you know, the whole thing about government by the best and brightest. And they are all that, and which means they also have capacity to be much, much worse. And then when it all goes wrong, the world enters this tyranny where supposedly pure humans who haven't been bioengineered take control of everything, and it becomes sort of like the Borgias and the nation states of Renaissance Italy, and at least as seen by Shakespeare. You know, there's all these murders, and for the common people there's nothing. They don't really, the concept of, well, not quite, but from the point of view of the first book, the concept of liberty has vanished from the world. In between, in the transition, the people who had been bioengineered or bioimproved, or as there's a rebellion against them, have to leave or they'll be killed. It's the time of the turmoils, and millions of them are killed and the other ones escape. The mules, who were the bioengineered overlords and who were so bioimproved that the rest of humanity didn't trust them to reproduce, so they're all male and they can't reproduce with normal human females, but also live very long lives. They take off in their ship, the Gervian, but on the way out they leave their bioimproved servants and whatnot, start this colony in the asteroid belt.
Now, in the first book, of course, we spent most of our time out in space, in the asteroid belt, the moon, not a whole lot of time on Earth. In the new book, in Darkship Renegades, are we going to see more of what's going on here?
Kind of. It's still, the focus is still on Eden, on the colony, because that's where Tina is. Tina has made the transition. Earth is no longer her home. She doesn't realize it fully, even though the first book ends with, you know, home and getting strip searched. There's no better place to say welcome home, like a strip search.
And certainly no analog in our country today to that.
Not at all. No. And, but, you know, even though it ends with that, she doesn't think of it as her home. However, when it is imperiled, which it is at the beginning of the second book, that's where her loyalties are. What she wants to make all right is the place where she belongs and where her family is, which is her husband's family. So she comes back to Earth to fix the situation on Eden. But we get glimpses of stuff that's going on Earth. And my world building as a way of surprising me, I had thrown in, more or less as a joke, in the first book. I mean, I do have, because I thought I had to. I thought I had to have a future history, worked out over the centuries and whatnot. And because Heinlein did, so as you know, that's the right way to do it. So I have 1,000 years of future history worked out. Except it's not detailed, because it couldn't be. I've spent, 20 years doing that. So in the first book, I plot by sudden fits of inspiration. And in the first book, this flash of inspiration hit me, and when she has to sell something, I ever go to a colony of secret USAians who are this religion that, of course, Athena doesn't know anything about, so she thinks they worship the eagle, and she has completely, because they're forbidden, so she knows nothing about them. But the idea is that they hold, in their heart, they hold the principles of the United States, which has long vanished from the earth. And to me, this was just a cute, nice throwaway scene until I started working on Darkship Renegades, and I found that the Earth was in fact in the middle of a revolution started by this secret cult of the USAians. And so when she comes back to Earth, she finds that her birthplace has been completely gutted in a battle, and there are battles raging, and she finds out that some of her best friends are on the side of the revolutionaries. And while she sympathizes with them, it's clearly not her fight. She's going back to fight her battle back in Eden.
I've noticed this recurring theme, and it started 60 or 70 years ago now with Atlas Shrugged, where some horrible, terrible apocalypse destroys the United States, and a new and better and more constitutional and liberty-minded United States arises from the ashes. We got that from Ayn Rand. More recently, we got it from John Ringo in The Last Centurion, show we were just talking about earlier tonight. You went a different route. America is destroyed, and the liberty-minded folks are actually forced to flee the planet. Are we going to see, no spoilers, but are they going to try and bring that back?
They do, but it's not in. It's a 1,000-year-long history, and eventually they just leave the Earth for a colony. You know, they take over a planet, and they become this sort of mythical Shangri-La where people are free and have natural rights, and you know, and they will appear in books either as a legend or periodically they will actually run into them, but they as it were, they, you know, eschew the sinful earth for, although it's not, they're not a religion. They're not a religion in the traditional sense. Well, they have rituals and the concept, a vague concept of an afterlife. They don't, it's one of those religions like many of the Indian religions which coexist with other religions. You can believe, you know, the theology of another religion, provided you believe that God had a special purpose for the United States, and this was, you know, the freedom of man, and that it was, I suspect the seed of this was the almost throwaway line in a Heinlein interview where he says, if I have a religion, it's my belief in the United States and the Constitution, and that sort of surface.
You know, we've spent so much time talking about this world, this universe you've created, but I think it's going to be the characters, or at least it's going to be the characters for me, that bring me to the second book, Darkship Renegades, which comes out in December. Is that correct?
December 2012.
Looking forward, though, past that, you have A Few Good Men coming out sometime after that, and my understanding is in March. My understanding is you've got some twists coming up with the characters we've come to know and love.
To an extent, I had a lot of very upset fans when I finished Darkship Thieves. They wanted a happy ending for a particular character, and I didn't know how to do that without going Frankenstein or the man with two brains or something.
No cheating, yeah, you gotta stay honest to your character.
So, and I told them, I sent so many letters back going, no, I can't do that. He's dead. He's really, really dead. That, of course, you know, there I have a character in my brain just taking over. And yes, he's dead. He's really, really dead. But there's someone else who can take his place. And A Few Good Men I like because the poor main character, first of all, it's almost a Count Monte Cristo situation. He's been imprisoned for reasons he doesn't understand. He's kept in solitary. He was a kid when he went in, now he's a middle-aged man, and he still doesn't have the slightest idea why he's in there. So he's made up this people make up explanations, particularly for the really horrible things that happen to them. So he's made up this entire mythology where he's guilty of this horrible stuff because he has to be guilty of something, otherwise the world stops making sense. And all of a sudden he finds himself set free, which is terrible enough if you've been imprisoned that long. And then, through no fault of his own, he finds himself at the fulcrum of the revolution. The revolution, he does one stupid thing, and next thing you know, he has to join the revolution or die. And of course, at that point, you know, there's these shady characters called the Sons of Liberty.
Oh, very shady, yes.
And they're supposed to be these terrible terrorists and all this stuff. And he finds that he has to depend on them for his survival. And that in the end he has to not quite lead them, although be their public face in order for the revolution to succeed. And he doesn't have an option. If the revolution doesn't succeed, he's going to die. So that's his only option.
It sounds like Mycroft got drafted.
Yes. Well, Mycroft at least had fun. This guy isn't really a computer, but to an extent, the character has, of course, I was in love with Mycroft, which, you know, I was a very weird girl. Now I'm a weird woman, it's different. But...
different how? No, don't answer that one.
The, Mycroft was very lonely, and that's why he gets involved in this. And Lucius is horribly, horribly lonely. And even after he's set free, is locked in himself by the fact that he no longer knows how to relate to human beings. And the revolution gives him what it gave Mycroft. It gives him interaction with real humans and the purpose and the reason to interact with humans and to become human again. Of course, Mycroft never was human before, so he becomes human for the first time, but, you know, it comes to the same. Only I don't kill him at the end. You know.
Well, okay, I asked for no spoilers, but I'll take that one.
Because I don't like kill the voice character.
Well, you can't really do that, because then you just end at the page where they go, "Arg," and that's a crummy ending. I feel a little greedy asking this question, because we're already getting 3 books now, and the last 2 in pretty short order in the Darkship world, but you say you've got 1,000 years kind of sketched out. Where are we going next? Are we going to spend more time in the asteroid belt, or do you have more universes?
Well, actually, there are lost colonies, because before the riots and before the riots and the turmoils, they deliberately erased a lot of information, and they shut down their much more advanced equivalent of the net. So there's a lot of knowledge that's lost, and it's lost pretty much to everyone. And almost a Canticle for Leibovitz type of situation. There's stuff that's just been irretrievably lost, or if they could figure it out, they wouldn't know what it meant. Turns out there are colonies within the solar system. That there are colonies in Ganymede, and I think there's something on the moon. I'm not absolutely sure. And they've been surviving on their own for 400 years, and they have their own history. And I have a suspicion there's nuns in space, because they infect me and tend to attack me when I least expect it. They sell remarkably well, though, as short stories. But there are colonies, and Athena and Kit, to an extent, although they belong to Eden more than anywhere else, but to an extent, of course, they don't belong anywhere, because they're different. And the last thing they want, frankly, is more of their kind. And let's just say there's a reason the ship the mules left in is called the Je reviens, which of course is the "I'll come back" in French. That apparently was a threat.
Return. All right.
And we'll see it in the 3rd of the Darkship book. Meanwhile, the Earth Revolution, which is the sub-series that starts with A Few Good Men, goes on to Through Fire, which is as the revolution it hits Liberté City, where their organization is not quite the Sons of Liberty, it's more the Sans-Culottes. I think you know where that is going.
I have a guess, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's 2 more books in that. The last one, I really want to call The Blood of Heroes, but I think Baen has a book by the same title several years ago, so I don't know if I can, but that's what I wanted to call it.
Yeah, just one more question for you, and I thought I was going to wrap up asking the last one, but talking to you tonight, I noticed something that was kind of new to me, or at least that I never noticed before. You have, at least in this series of books written and unwritten, a recurring theme of people who lose or leave or change their homes, and of course you left Portugal at a young age.
Yes.
Is this something that resonates with you?
It wasn't a very young age. I left for the first time at 18 as an exchange student. Well, 17 as an exchange student. After the revolution, I didn't realize, I don't know, I didn't realize I felt like an expatriate after all the stuff that I went through after the revolution. Until, you know, I came here as an exchange student. I met my husband on his 18th birthday party. His mom made me sit on his lap.
Practically a cradle robber, I had no idea.
Yeah, I was 17, so, you know. And so we mutually robbed each other's cradle. And of course, you know, we were young and stupid, so every time we met, we argued, got in big fights, and then I left, mostly because I never gave him an opportunity to talk, because I was good that way. And I mean, our last chance, he takes me out. Well, actually, we went out to take a friend of mine back from a party, next city over or whatever. And coming back, the car breaks down in the middle of the cornfields. You'd think you'd have had the chance to say something, only of course he was scared. I think he was trying something, so he went out to look at the motor. And at the time, the only thing you'd have noticed wrong with the motor was if it was missing. And even then, he probably wouldn't have noticed it. But he went out, and eventually someone gave us a ride to the phone. And people came and got us, and, you know, we never got to talk. So I went back to Portugal and got into college. And 4 years later, I find myself in my brother's office. My brother works for the phone company in Portugal. He retired at 50, which means he was being paid for doing nothing in a more honest manner. It's not his fault. He got hired to run the computer system for the phone company in Portugal before the phone company had a single computer. So eventually they got computers, but still, you know, he didn't. Anyway, I went to pick him up. I was in college. I went to pick him up, take him to lunch. And he had to go to a meeting. And he said, I have a meeting. I'll be right back. Sit there. That phone is not metered. You can call anywhere in the world on it. Well, the meeting was supposed to be half an hour. An hour later, I was pretty bored. And although my brother and his friends used to call the Vatican, that's what time it was, you know, it's not the type of thing that really appealed to me. So I called the only phone number I knew by heart in the States, which was my mother-in-law's, because it was really memorable. They had been my family liaison when I was an exchange student. So I called her, and I guess she was busy. So she said, why don't you call Dan? He's in South Carolina. And I said, I don't think he likes me very much. And she said, oh, he thinks the world of you. Just call him. Well, I called him. And an hour and a half later, when my brother came to get me for lunch, I said, I'm going to marry that man. And he said, sure, you're going to marry everyone. Come to lunch. So I went to lunch, and 7 months later, we got married in South Carolina. And now, I think I was, although that's not why I married Dan. In fact, when I fell in love with Dan, I had a tentative offer for and now my mind's not working, postgraduate internship, not assistantship, when you're teaching some classes, and good Lord. Assistantship at Brown to get my graduate degree. I had applied without my parents knowing, just like I applied to be an exchange student, because if I told them, they wouldn't let me. And I had applied, and I was in negotiations which I didn't tell them for several years, of course, because I was afraid you'd be upset, because I just dropped them cold and got married. But while I had fallen in love with the United States before I fell in love with Dan, I didn't say that's why I married him. I said, you know, it was still a very tough adaptation. There are habits of mind and habits of thought and just little things, how you do things. I think it was easier because I had never been an adult in Portugal. So it was just slightly harder than transitioning from being a college student to being an adult. It was still pretty tough for about 3-4 years. And I kept thinking of myself, I kept thinking, well, you know, I'm a stranger here, and really. And then I went to Portugal for a few weeks. And I realized I was far more American than I had ever been Portuguese. And I haven't looked back since. But yeah, there is a mind change with adaptation. And since it's part of who I am, it would come through. Although I have no clue where the other theme, and I know there is a theme where people get their mind taken over in more than one of my books, and I have absolutely no clue where that comes from. It's never happened to me. It's just...
Well, I have to say that experience lends a credence, a credibility, a realism to your characters, and it keeps us coming back. I can't wait to read the next books. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you have another series that you're working on set right here on Earth that has maybe the weirdest genesis of any series of science fiction books ever.
When 2001, my first book came out, the Shakespeare series, came out like a month after 9/11, also known as the worst quarter in publishing industry.
Yeah.
And it crashed really hard. And because the publishing industry works that way, the next book had almost no print run, the other one had an even smaller one. And after that, because apparently this was my fault, no one would buy me. Until I got a request from Jim Baen to write a book which I still haven't written. And started being involved with Baen. And after about a year of this, I got a call from him. And he said, Sarah, I need a book. This was, I think, March 3rd. I need a book by the 21st. Do you have a novel you want to sell me? Someone had dropped off the schedule and left him with a hole. I said, sure. I had the book started. I had about 10 pages on it. The reason I had about 10 pages on it and I had it started is that I had dreamed it. And this is one of those weird things. The weird things that happen to writers. Periodically, I dream that I'm at a signing or whatever. And I'm in fact signing books I haven't written yet. Or stories I haven't written yet. Now, remember, my career is completely crashed. I think I'm never going to sell again. I have this dream that I'm at World Fantasy, which is one of the big cons. And it's in a particular hotel where it's been twice now since then, where they set the signings outside. So it's in Arizona in November. So the signings outside at night. There are these little candles on these stone tables out on the patio, and it's beautiful. But the thing is, it's also not. You don't see very well because you just.
Especially when you're trying to read your own book that you haven't written yet.
Exactly, and this woman comes up now. I had seen this happen to other authors, not to me at the time because I had 3 books out. But but I've seen people come up with these huge boxes of books and just start bringing them out, and I dreamed I was sitting at one of those tables, and this woman comes out, puts this big box in front of me, and starts pulling books out, and I'm going, oh, you have everything I've ever written. Oh, And she goes, oh yeah, I found you with the Shifter series. And she pulls this book out and hands it to me. And I realized two things. First, that I don't have a Shifter series. I have never had any interest in writing shapeshifters. And second, that this is the most atrocious cover I have ever laid eyes on. And I said, oh, you got the first edition. And she said, yes, it took me long to find it. See, I read the second edition first, but I heard about this cover and I went and bought it. And it was this, I'm thinking, and it's clear from the way she's talking, this is now a best-selling series. And I'm thinking, okay. And at that point, the me that knows she's dreaming goes, I have to figure out what this book is. So I turn it over and I read the blurb and I read like the first few pages. And I woke up and I wrote what I had got. And it's a weird book because even though it's urban fantasy, there is no magic or it's just these, and I had no clue until I started writing the third book why, but these people change shapes. And the main character is Tom, who changes into a dragon, which freaks him out because he knows dragons never existed. And then there's Kiri, who changes into a panther, and they end up owning a diner together. And the story, there is a reason the diner attracts, which is laid out in the first book, why the diner attracts shifters of all shapes and types. And you know, I take great delight in having shark shapeshifters and just odd, not you know, the fantasy werewolves, and although there are wolves, and I have a squirrel shapeshifter who is the chief of the Rodent Liberation Front and keeps writing on walls and smokes cigarettes and wears a beret. But
I want to see the movie of this just for a cigarette smoking squirrel.
But
I won't let my sons watch it.
But I wrote this, and you know, as I said, the only difference is that they change shapes, and there is a whole underworld of shape changers who can't reveal themselves. And then I started writing the third book, and I realized there's a whole history to it. These people were in fact created and are on the earth for a purpose, and that there's this big menace coming at us from elsewhere. And it's not quite space, it's another dimension. And they are all that stands between the earth and extinction. And that starts a whole completely different big jump. And that's the books that are out are Draw One in the Dark, which I'm assured is going to be reissued. Gentleman Takes a Chance, that I'm also assured is going to be... Oh, and the first book has a better cover for the paperback, and that's the one we're going with. And Gentleman Takes a Chance. Of course, Draw One in the Dark is dark coffee, black coffee. I use diner lingo too, although it also relates to the plot, because in the first book they're trying to figure out what the shifter is that's killing things. So it's, you know, Draw One in the Dark, they don't have clues. Gentleman Takes a Chance is the second book, and it's where Tom and Kiri really solidify their relationship. And of course, Gentleman Takes a Chance is the lingo for hash. Oh, and Tom's father orders Gentleman Takes a Chance at the end of Draw One in the Dark, and at the end of Gentleman Takes a Chance he orders Noah's Boy, which is ham. And then at the end of Noah's Boy you'll order Bowl of Red, which is tomato soup. And but Noah's Boy also has an echo, because in a way Tom is something very ancient. And there's a whole history on why it was put there.
You know, I try and get lunch about once a week at Rosie's Diner, just a few minutes away from where I live in Monument, and this could explain some of the stuff I've seen going on there.
Yes. Well, it's based on Pete's Kitchen in Denver, which is my favorite diner in the entire world. I'm fascinated by diners, and that's part of the whole culture transition thing. There are no diners anywhere else in the world. No one has the idea of having a restaurant anywhere else in the world that's open 24 hours, and you can have breakfast anytime you want. When my nephews visited here, we took them to have breakfast at 10 p.m. and this blew their minds. It was a liberating experience.
That's America, baby. We got bacon any time of day.
And the eggs. The eggs were important.
Yeah.
But you know, I love diners because of that, and I love them because when I was first in the States and I was trying to get a handle, I mean, I knew Dan, I knew other programmers, but I was trying to get a handle on how the country was, you know, other people, real people out there. I loved going to diners and just sitting there very quietly and listening to people talk.
You watch the Other Flow of Humanity at a diner. It's wonderful.
Yeah, well, I tried not to take notes because people got upset. But, you know.
Wow. Great conversation with Sarah Hoyt, who has 2 more books coming out very soon in December and March in the Darkship series. That's Darkship Renegades, due out in December, and in March, A Few Good Men, plus the Shifter series. It just sounds like it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Thanks for watching. I'm Steve Green.